Have you, as Lisa, done shadow work or in general work on the personality structure to have this shift in perception? I don't know if the shadow work led to this shift in perception, but I certainly did a lot of shadow work. And I presume through doing the shadow work, it cut a good amount of seeking. So I'm sure that, like, in some ways that needed to happen in this case. And then after the awakening, there is a continuation of the shadow work. I still have shadow stuff coming up. It's part of the personality structure. But certainly beforehand, there was lots of shadow work, and I've spoken about that in many talks before. But still now there can be issues that come up, like past issues. Like, for example, in talks, in live talks, in retreats, for example, like sometimes I would say that I sometimes get a little scared of some energies of the participants that arise. And in me, what it does is sometimes, like that fear, when I really go into it, it's like a fear of being killed. It's like fear of like stones being rocked at you, thrown at you. And I'd say that's like shadow work. Like that's part of the ego structure, not the ego, like the personality structure or the ego structure. It's difficult to talk about because Ramesh used to call the ego structure the character. So, and the character has these types of things in it. It couldn't function if it didn't. The seeking energy, so the identification, is when you believe that's true and you seek to avoid it. So, it doesn't necessarily not moving away from it. So someone's being aggressive with me in talks or something, it doesn't mean not moving away from it or putting boundaries up. It's more like being afraid of that energy. So when somebody's seeking to avoid that energy, they might not be able to admit it. Like I don't have any issues admitting that I feel sometimes this energy of like fear that people are going to kill me. Like, especially like when you really like hit on somebody's defenses or something. And so it's just sitting with that, like a fear in the belly. And that I can connect it to like being burned to the stake or something, like being a witch and being burned to the stake. So this sort of thing always occurs. It's part of being human, and that it's not about not having it, it's about not being afraid of it, like not running away from it. Like there is going to be fear when you're in a group of people, because if you don't fit into it, they are going to chuck you out. And if they chuck you out, if you get chucked out from society, you will die. But it's just a feeling. It's not important. It's not who you are. It's not who they are. It's not truth. It's not fact. It's simply an emotion that comes and goes, a sensation, an experience that comes and goes with no importance. And there's nothing to hide. You don't need to be somebody that's really brave. So often you get the idea like you need to be really brave and like the hero character that's never afraid of anything. And when I'm enlightened, I will never be afraid of anything on the human level. And I will always be like, "Rah!" And I will be stronger than everyone else. And that's not what it's like. It's like being more human, being more radical. Like for sure, like after 10 years now, especially sharing over the internet, like some people get lots of hate for you. And it's not about being like, oh, I don't care. It's it doesn't affect me that much, the general comments, but sometimes like when there's somebody that's really on your case of sending you lots of hate, or when they're at your retreat, it's just allowing that feeling, allowing that vulnerability, nothing to hide. That is what comes up in the system. Thanks, Lucas. I know that's most probably really disappointing, because when you're seeking, you have this idea of becoming like this perfect person, and to find out that it doesn't mean that is really disappointing. And also, when you're seeking, like, you want to be able to project onto the teacher the perfect person, because then that also bolsters your ego. It's like, I'm going to be a perfect person like this master, and I have the best master in the world, or the best teacher who's like all these things, and to find out that they have vulnerabilities as well, there's like highly disappointing for your ego. But when you begin to see it less personally, it's like just energies. They're energies, just like the tree blowing, the sun shining. They mean nothing. They aren't you. They aren't an identity. They're not here forever. They come and they go, and they don't mean anything. And they're just as they are. And the less identified you are with them, the more willing you are to admit it. But it's not always safe to admit it. Like, you know, if I'm with somebody, like I remember a talk in Sweden a few years ago, and this guy began to get very aggressive with me. And so in the talk, what I did was I just moved it on to the next question. So I didn't sit there and say, I feel like I'm feeling a little bit scared that you want to kill me now. That will be a disaster. Can you imagine? They'd get so angry. How fucking dare you? Yeah. Like, my character is not enlightened. Your character is never going to get enlightened. If you seek that, you're in la la land. It's mostly about power if you're seeking that, because you want to be the perfect person in comparison to other people. Because perfect is always comparison to other people. Like, I'm less afraid than you, I'm more afraid than you, you're more afraid than me, I'm more enlightened than you, you're more fearful than me, you're I have been listening to you for years and never heard of shadow work. What is it? Shadow work, hi Mark. I don't use that expression very often, but it basically just means like the darker side of the person. Like, so when somebody's like really identified what they would mean, like they could be being really nice, like, hey, have a great day. This is my interpretation of shadow work, by the way, Lisa's. I'm not sure if it's everyone else's. It's like, hey, have a really great day. But underneath that, like deep down, when they get into their shadow, they're actually feeling very vengeful. And if they spoke from the shadow, they'd be like, I hate you, stick it up your ass. And then underneath that, there is like maybe like a hatred of humanity or a hatred of parents or something. So that is shadow work. So the shadow work that I described in myself tonight was like sometimes when I'm holding retreats and somebody's very aggressive, like the hidden stuff that happens in me, even though it's not so hidden to me, but it's like still, I don't necessarily express it in the moment, is like sometimes I can be afraid of people's anger, and then deep down in me, like when I go into my belly, it's like a feeling that they're going to kill me, and it's like a connection to being a witch in the past life, you know, being burnt at the stake. It's not true, but it's like a feeling that comes up. So you could call that like shadow work. So it's like someone starts behaving in a certain way, and then on my deepest level, it manifests of a fear they're going to kill me. If you understand. What it might manifest as in the retreat is like an avoidance of that person, or like trying to navigate the person away. I don't think I would be really, really fake, like, have a nice day, and want to kill the other person back or something. That might have happened when I was younger, when I hadn't done loads of work on my shadow. So it's like a, you know, acting these things out, like being really friendly, but deep down being like, yeah, I don't know if I'm great at expressing shadow work, but maybe you can look it up on the internet. But I know what people mean by it. Yeah. Nice.